And you said, I'm posting this here for everyone to see. The Josh Brown in this interview is exactly the man he is in person. I took a photo of him at the gym and he's launched a war at me for it. Since then, every time I see him at the gym, he attempts to intimidate me. He knows exactly who I am from my comments on here too. He's an evil man, and while moving your family to Montana protected them, none of us in the Westlake area are safe until he's behind bars. Those were your comments and your very real feelings of being intimidated by him. So you took a picture of him. Did he see you taking that picture, I guess, at a gym?
This is the brief on the ongoing witness accounts regarding Joshua Brown. So we're looking at some key analysis and an exclusive interview detailing pretty serious allegations. The gist is that Joshua Brown has not only consistently lied to authorities, but he's now engaging in some really aggressive, intimidating behavior toward members of the community. First up, the idea that Brown just doesn't tell the truth. Sources say his story about what happened at the beach house is completely different from what Joni Lamb described, and a lot of people are pointing fingers at the Colleyville police for closing their investigation way too fast, without even talking to key people like the nanny. Second, there's this really chilling testimony from a woman named Kendall who kept running into Brown at her gym. She took his photo to warn some friends, and he immediately noticed. He then stood up, hands on his hips, and just menaced her and her husband with this 5-minute-long stare-down. Then, in another incident, she said he did these bizarre, quote, pervy stretches on a machine just staring at her for 10 minutes until she felt so uncomfortable she had to leave. And finally, what really sounds like escalating stalker behavior. Get this. Brown walked past 5 different towel dispensers to use the one right next to Kendall's treadmill. He stood there for 30 seconds, just pulling out towels and then throwing them away without using them. But here's the part that's truly disturbing. She described his look as having beady black eyes, the exact same words Susie Lamb used, which suggests a really dangerous and consistent pattern. These accounts paint a picture of a persistent, escalating pattern of predatory behavior, all following the controversial closure of a police investigation.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we've got a complex and frankly a deeply disturbing stack of source material to unpack.
It's a lot to get through.
It is. Our mission here is to really synthesize these accounts that allege pervasive dishonesty, manipulation, and intimidation all surrounding Joshua Brown.
Yeah. And we're pulling together claims from, everywhere. Family members, private communications with police, all the way to really detailed eyewitness accounts.
And these accounts are of alleged public harassment that happened long after the official investigation was closed. That's a key part of this.
That's right. The sources we're looking at, they aren't just, rehashing the original allegations. They are laser focused on establishing a pattern.
That pattern.
Exactly. We're synthesizing documents that describe alleged deception and, frankly, aggressive behavior that just kept happening in public, very high visibility spaces.
And there's one specific account that stands out.
There is. A woman named Kendall provides this incredibly detailed story of 3 specific and escalating public encounters with Brown. Encounters that she ultimately describes in terms you'd reserve for highly dangerous conduct.
And what's immediate, right from the first page of these sources, is the emotional urgency. This isn't just about minor disagreements.
Not at all.
We have extended family members on record calling Brown a hypocrite and a liar. And then when you shift to the accounts of this alleged public stuff, the language, it just gets so much more intense.
That's when you see phrases like stalker dangerous behavior.
Exactly. Stalker dangerous behavior. So today, we need to analyze exactly what this alleged pattern looks like and why the sources believe it raises these profound questions about the police's decision to close their investigation in the first place.
Okay, so to really understand the intensity here, the community response and these claims of intimidation, we first have to go back. We have to address the fundamental allegations of deception that the sources lay out.
The foundation.
The foundation. And it relies really heavily on testimony from within Brown's own extended family network.
Okay, let's unpack that because an internal perspective is, it's critical. The sources cite Rebecca and JW. They're identified as extended family members, and they proactively reached out to the Colleyville Police Department. So what was the core of their message?
Their message was, in essence, a clear warning to law enforcement.
A warning.
A direct warning. They reportedly stated their firm belief that Brown is a narcissist and, this is the critical part, a liar.
And this wasn't just, family drama or idle gossip?
No, no. The sources are clear on this. These individuals reported that they had allegedly caught him doing inappropriate and really alarming things over a long period of time.
So there's a history there.
A long history. And these incidents were apparently serious enough that they felt compelled, according to what we're reading, to write formal letters and communicate all of this directly to the investigators.
And what was the point of doing that?
They're urging them to be skeptical of absolutely anything Brown said.
That context is just, it's vital, isn't it? It frames the source's core belief that seemed to emerge from these early police interviews, which is, and I'm quoting here, that Brown does not speak the truth.
Right.
But how do the sources back that up beyond, familial distress? Do they point to specific contradictions in the investigation itself?
Oh, absolutely. The source material highlights what they see as clear, calculated deception relating to the events at the beach house.
The site of the original allegation.
The very same. They focus on Brown's alleged conflicting statements that he gave directly to the police, and they claim these discrepancies reveal an attempt to manage the facts, not report them accurately.
Okay, let's dig into that specific moment because the sources really, really emphasize this quote. So, regarding his conversation with the police about the beach house, Brown allegedly stated, quote, "I don't know where she was because I never saw her." That sounds pretty definitive.
It does, on its face. But the sources then present a further statement that, they argue, completely undercuts his original claim.
He said something else.
He allegedly added a clarification later. He said, okay, well, I saw her, I knew she was going up there, but when we're looking out the window, I have no idea where she is.
Whoa.
The sources argue this is a significant and very intentional shift in his narrative.
I can see the contradiction, but let's play devil's advocate. Why is that second statement, "I knew she was going up there," so damning in the source's eyes? I mean, couldn't this just be a natural correction or maybe a poor memory under stress?
The sources argue strenuously that it cannot be. They keep coming back to the context. This event happened in a physically confined space.
Yeah.
A beach house.
Right. Not a stadium.
Exactly. So the critical question the sources raise about this alleged clarification is, what's behind you? You don't know. They suggest his proximity, his direct involvement. It all meant he knows exactly what took place at the beach house.
So by claiming uncertainty.
By claiming that uncertainty, the sources allege he was actively trying to obfuscate the details. And what's more, they note that his version of events and the alleged version provided by Joanne Lamb, they differ significantly from accounts gathered from other witnesses.
And for the sources, that's the smoking gun.
To them, it's conclusive evidence of a deliberate attempt to conceal the truth from investigators.
So if we follow the sources here, the police had these internal warnings from the family. Then they had conflicting statements directly from Brown about the core event.
Yeah.
And yet the investigation was shut down. This alleged failure then leads to the next major point of frustration for them, which is the claim that there were critical, uninvestigated leads.
Precisely. The sources are deeply critical of the Colleyville police for shutting down the investigation when they believe these essential witnesses were just left hanging.
And the claim is that without these interviews, you can't see the full scope. You can't see the pattern.
You can't. You're getting an incomplete picture.
So who specifically do the sources feel should have been interviewed to complete that picture?
The most prominent individual they cite is the nanny to Jonathan and Susie Lamb.
The nanny. Why her?
Well, her perspective is seen as absolutely crucial because she would have had sustained day-to-day access to the family dynamic. She could have potentially witnessed behavior or interactions that would either substantiate or, contradict the claims being made.
A neutral third-party observer inside the home.
Exactly. And beyond her, the sources specifically name two other people, Denise Boggs and Debbie Lenhart.
And what context do the sources give for why Boggs and Lenhart are so important? For a listener who isn't familiar with every single document, why would their testimony be so essential?
Well, the sources claim that Denise Boggs and Debbie Lenhart were key community members, or maybe associates, who allegedly had specific firsthand knowledge about Brown's interactions, particularly concerning the children or, the family's environment.
So they could speak to this alleged pattern of manipulation.
That's what the sources suggest. Their accounts were anticipated to shed light on this alleged pattern of manipulation and proximity-seeking behavior that the sources believe Brown employs.
And if you leave these external perspectives out,
you're relying solely on the narratives of the people directly affected or the accused.
Yeah.
And the sources find that wholly inadequate for a thorough investigation.
And finally, on this whole section on foundational deception, there's the matter of Jonathan Brown's visits to the Lamb home, the frequency of them.
Correct. The sources really emphasize how important it is to determine the true number of times Jonathan Brown allegedly stopped by the home of Jonathan and Susie.
And why is that detail so crucial?
Because the sources claim it directly contradicts the public narrative that was being pushed by Brown's lawyer.
And the lawyer reportedly said what?
That these visits only happened one time.
One time. So what's the significance of that number? I mean, why does one time versus numerous times matter so much in establishing a pattern?
It matters immensely. If the visits were in fact numerous, it suggests an established, comfortable presence in the children's environment. This aligns perfectly with the alleged playbook the sources describe.
The playbook of establishing control and proximity.
Right. But if the lawyer's claim of one time were accurate, you could write it off as an accidental or an isolated event. It would be much less sinister.
So by failing to verify the actual frequency of these visits,
The sources argue that the police missed a huge chance to confirm the deliberate, maybe even escalating nature of the alleged relationship that was being built. And by doing so, they allowed a critical misrepresentation to just stand unchallenged in the public sphere.
it's really hard to reconcile the alleged calculated deception that we've just been talking about with the towering public image that Joshua Brown cultivated, especially within that high-profile DFW faith community.
It is, and that contrast, that cognitive dissonance, is absolutely central to the source's argument about hypocrisy.
Right, it's the whole point.
Absolutely. So, after establishing this alleged deception in private police interviews, the sources then pivot to reviewing Brown's extensive public statements.
And these statements, they're designed to project what exactly?
An image of complete moral certainty, unwavering faith. He often uses this very powerful spiritual language.
Like the quotes they provide, things like, what God starts, no one can stop, or affirming that God has a plan and a purpose for their lives. I mean, that's the language of religious certainty and, family values.
Precisely. And this image was amplified massively by his media platform. The sources detail one specific appearance on Daystar, the huge Christian broadcasting network, where he and his wife Rachel presented this deeply wholesome picture.
What did they talk about?
They discussed serving a mighty God and the overwhelming impact of their ministry, all while, being surrounded by all the babies around here. They even included this cute little anecdote about their 5-year-old checking out the camera.
So learning the ropes of the family business.
Presumably, yeah. It's this carefully crafted, high-value image, successful ministry, large, thriving family, and, technical proficiency. It's the ideal public faith persona.
It really is.
But the sources, they provide this interesting, slightly awkward historical anecdote that suggests this public poise may have been constructed over time.
Oh, this is the Benny Hinn story.
This is the Benny Hinn story. They recall an incident years prior when Benny Hinn allegedly asked Brown to pray on his show, Heart for the World.
How did that go?
The sources claim he struggled, visibly. He stumbled through the entire prayer and just appeared very uncomfortable.
So this early public anxiety, it stands in pretty sharp contrast to the polished broadcaster he later became.
It does, and it reinforces the source's narrative that this confident persona is, in fact, a performance.
Okay, let's use this as a transition. Let's move into the setting where this alleged intimidation campaign that the sources detail actually took place, a location that is almost as high profile as the Daystar studios themselves.
The Westlake Gym.
The Westlake Gym.
And the setting is so critical for understanding the nature of the alleged harassment. We are talking about Lifetime in Westlake, Texas.
And the sources are very careful to establish this is not just your average gym.
Oh, not at all. They describe it as an extremely high-end facility. It's more like a resort or a modern alternative to an exclusive country club.
And because it's so expensive and exclusive, the membership attracts a very specific, very affluent clientele.
Exactly. The sources call this place the Mecca for DFW Christianity.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a hub for Christian celebrities, influential social media figures, Instagram influencers, and of course people closely associated with megachurches like Gateway Church and Daystar. This is a place where being seen is inherently part of the local culture.
And that leads directly to the claims the sources make about Brown's alleged celebrity-seeking behavior within this very specific context.
Right. The sources allege that Brown was frequently observed just standing in the lobby, talking loudly to a friend, in a way that suggested he was, quote, just wanting to be seen.
Like holding court.
Sort of. They compare this behavior explicitly to minor celebrities in Los Angeles hotel lobbies. deliberately lingering and projecting their presence, just waiting for acknowledgement or attention.
But it's the location of this alleged posing that the sources highlight as the real red flag for parents, right?
Crucially, yes, that is the point they hammer home. The sources point out that he was often positioning himself right in the bottleneck,
Yeah.
right between the main lobby and the designated childcare area.
So for concerned parents in this exclusive, tightly knit community.
For them, his alleged history, combined with his high-profile loitering right near the children's facility, it immediately triggered intense vigilance and, well, suspicion. That environment is the powder keg where these subsequent confrontations all took place.
So the stage is now set for this alleged campaign of intimidation, which the sources detail through the testimony of one woman in particular, Kendall. And the conflict itself, as the source material describes it, began because Brown had previously complained to police about harassment. He claimed someone was taking pictures of him at the gym.
And Kendall is identified as that person.
But we have to emphasize her motivation, right? According to the sources, this wasn't some personal vendetta.
No, she states it very clearly. She felt it was her duty as a mother and as a community member to take that photo and circulate it among friends who also used the gym's childcare.
And her rationale is pretty straightforward.
It was. Given the context of the closed investigation, she felt, quote, it's not okay for him to be there in such close proximity to a childcare facility.
So her actions were almost a form of, community self-defense.
Absolutely. The source is presented as an act of public vigilance.
Right.
I mean, she initially texted friends, and she expressed some doubt about whether she should even intervene.
But what did they say?
Their response was immediate. It was supportive. They said, yes, take a picture, put him on blast.
And that really shows the depth of the shared concern within that DFW community.
It really does.
So let's move to the first confrontation. The sources say this happened back in March. Kendall describes trying to be discreet, hiding behind some equipment to get the picture.
But Brown spotted her immediately.
And his alleged response was
instantaneous and aggressive. Kendall claims Brown stood straight up, put his hands on his hips, and immediately stared me down.
And she tried to just ignore him.
She did. She tried to continue her exercise, just hoping he'd move on. But according to her account, he did not.
How long did this alleged intimidation last?
Kendall describes it as lasting for what felt like 5 full minutes.
5 minutes is a long time to be stared at.
It's an eternity. The psychological pressure was so intense, the sources claim, that she felt she had to call her 6-foot husband over from the weights section.
And did that help?
Apparently not. Even with her husband standing right there, Brown allegedly continued the stare down until Kendall and her husband ultimately felt they just had to abandon their workout and leave the area.
That sounds like a really calculated, nonverbal assertion of dominance, especially in such a public space.
The sources interpret it exactly that way. Kendall believed at the time that the official case was closed, which just reinforced her view that Brown was, quote, on his high horse.
He felt untouchable.
Comfortable with his status, and using this public setting to intimidate anyone who challenged his presence there. When the attention he seemed to be seeking turned negative, his alleged reaction was immediate and menacing.
Now, here's where the source material draws a really critical line between this public encounter and the original private allegations. Kendall used a very specific and frankly chilling phrase to describe Brown during that intimidation.
Yes. She described him as staring me down with his beady black eyes.
Okay, let's spend some time on this, analyzing why the sources flagged this particular detail. This phrase, beady black eyes, is allegedly the exact same description that Susie Lamb mentioned years ago.
In her characterization of what happened at the beach house, yes.
Yeah. So why is the reappearance of this specific, very personalized description considered such a huge concern?
This is a point of really significant analysis in the source material. It suggests that the reaction Kendall witnessed wasn't just, a reaction to being photographed. It suggests the manifestation of a consistent, innate persona that emerges under pressure or perceived threat.
So it's a signature look, almost.
That's what they're arguing. When the sources connect the phrase beady black eyes to Susie Lamb's prior description, they're arguing that this distinct, menacing look is a telesignature psychological expression that allegedly links the events years apart.
Which implies something deeper than just a bad mood.
It implies a deeper, possibly non-contextual predatory quality, rather than just momentary anger. And that is why the sources treat this overlap as highly significant evidence of an unchanging underlying character. It's what ties the public intimidation right back to the initial, private allegations.
And the sources allege that this intimidation, it didn't end with that stare down.
Not at all.
The second documented encounter, according to Kendall, escalated the alleged behavior from, passive aggression to something far more explicit and, frankly, unsettling.
Yes. This happened the very next time Kendall was at the gym. She was on a front row treadmill, which she typically used for about 10 minutes before her class started.
Okay.
And according to her account, Brown spotted her, and he allegedly initiated a completely new tactic of harassment.
And what did he allegedly do?
Brown allegedly came over to the stretching space that was directly in front of her, only about 15 feet away, and began doing what Kendall explicitly described as pervy stretches.
We need to be specific about the description provided in the sources here, because the posture is absolutely key to the allegation of his intent.
It is. The sources detail the position very clearly. He was sitting on a machine in what's commonly known as the butterfly stretch.
Can you describe that?
It involves sitting with your knees pushed down, feet together, and your legs wide open. The sources note that this position inherently exposes the groin area.
And what was his alleged focus during this stretch? I mean, where was he looking?
Kendall claims he stared straight at her, maintained eye contact. And he remained in that position, allegedly exposing his private parts towards me for the entire 10 minutes she was on the treadmill.
10 minutes?
The entire time. She states he did not move or get up until she finally left the treadmill to go to her class.
That is an aggressive, sustained act of alleged psychological intimidation in a public place. How do the sources analyze the intent behind that kind of behavior?
The sources argue that this was a calculated, nonverbal threat. It's a perfect example of the alleged playbook in action.
How so?
It's pushing a boundary just short of, actionable harassment or indecent exposure. By leveraging the public protected setting of the gym, he allegedly maximized the psychological discomfort and fear without crossing a clear legal line that would lead to his immediate removal or arrest.
And what was Kendall's immediate internal interpretation of seeing this alleged act? What did she think?
Her internal reaction was one of immediate and profound recognition. She thought, and this is a quote, "I just thought, okay, well, that's what a pedophile would do."
That's the highest level of emotional distress that's cited in the source material.
It is. And here we have to reiterate the legal clarification that the sources themselves make.
Of course.
We are reporting the claims that he is an alleged pedophile, as he has not been charged in court. However, Kendall's reaction illustrates the severity of the psychological impact of his alleged behavior.
So she viewed the action, this sitting in a blatant, uncomfortable pose and just staring, as what?
As a boundary test.
Okay.
An act of pure intimidation. She alleges it lacked all self-awareness or, basic social decency.
So then we move to the third encounter. This one happened just 2 weeks before her interview with the source. And this is where she uses the most alarming language yet.
Stalker dangerous behavior.
Stalker dangerous behavior.
And this encounter was profoundly unsettling because, as she describes it, it was so clearly premeditated. It occurred after Kendall had seen Brown's police interview.
The one where he discussed the alleged harassment at the gym.
The very same. She was on a front row treadmill again, and Brown spotted her from a considerable distance. We're talking 50 feet across the facility.
So he knew exactly who she was. And he allegedly decided to confront her again, but in a much more subtle, controlling way. What was the tactic this time?
This is where the source material details the deliberate calculation. The gym had multiple paper towel dispenser stations.
Right. They're all over the place.
All over. Brown allegedly bypassed 5 perfectly good closer towel dispensers to go specifically to the one located directly next to her treadmill.
That's a huge distance to cover just for a paper towel.
Exactly. It makes no sense functionally.
Right.
And the sources detail his actions there. He allegedly took his sweet time getting paper towels, stood there for a full 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
And then immediately threw all the paper towels away without waving down a single piece of equipment, and then he left. It was a purely positional move.
And Kendall labels this calculation stalker dangerous behavior on the part of Josh Brown. Why is this just getting a paper towel cross the line into stalking territory for her?
It's the deliberate choreography of it and the assertion of knowledge. She interprets this action as proving 2 things.
Okay.
First, that he was actively trying to frighten her and assert his physical presence in her personal workout space, even though she had already contacted the police about him. And second, and this is crucial, she notes that this shows he clearly monitors comments and knows exactly who she is.
Despite allegedly claiming to police that he doesn't monitor any suit comments.
Exactly. The sources argue he was engaging in direct, personalized retaliation for her prior actions.
Okay, so let's discuss the repercussions of this alleged campaign of deception and intimidation, starting with how Brown's narrative allegedly just broke down when it was confronted with Kendall's perspective.
Right, so after watching Brown's interview with the Colleyville PD, Kendall realized that he was talking about her gym incident, and in her view, he was grossly misrepresenting the facts of the encounter to paint himself as the victim.
And before watching the interview, she said she found a kind of grim humor in it all.
She did, but that disappeared instantly after she watched it.
She describes feeling a righteous fury after watching him speak. What specifically shocked her about that interview?
She said she felt shocked by his brazenness, the complete execution of this deceptive playbook during a police interview. She concluded that his native tongue is lying, and that he started lying about me right off the bat, just fabricating a version of events that put her in the wrong.
So for her, this attempt to control the narrative, to essentially lie to the police about her.
It was unforgivable.
And her response was to take action, right? To correct the official record.
Yes. She immediately called the Colleyville PD. She felt compelled to counteract his alleged misrepresentations and to make sure her detailed version of exactly how the incident happened, the 5-minute stare down, the position of his hands, her calling her husband over, was officially on file with the authorities.
The sources also bring in some external validation for Kendall's decision to intervene, right? They cite a legal perspective.
They do. They refer to a criminal prosecution attorney, Vanessa Johnson, who's a highly experienced attorney with 20 years of practice.
Then what was her take?
Johnson's analysis strongly validates the community's defensive posture. She reportedly determined that taking the picture was a normal thing for any mom to do regarding a suspected person near childcare, especially given the history and the setting.
So she basically questioned why Brown would think this wouldn't happen.
Exactly. The sources quote Johnson asking that very question. And this legal input is used by the sources to affirm that this type of vigilance is entirely necessary and justified, especially when official police channels are perceived as having failed them.
And this alleged intimidation, it seems to have created a much broader atmosphere of fear. Kendall wasn't the only person who changed their behavior because of this.
That's a crucial point the sources make. Susie Lamb reportedly told Kendall that another friend had to severely restrict her life. She stopped going to the Lifetime gym during the day and would only go at night when her husband could be there with her.
Wow.
So that points to a pervasive sense of fear and the real-world impact of Brown's alleged public behavior on the daily lives of women in that very affluent DFW community.
And the sources connect this behavior pattern directly back to the original actions against Jonathan and Susie Lamb, arguing that this public intimidation is just consistent conduct for him.
They draw a very direct parallel. They explicitly state that Jonathan and Susie Lamb quite literally had to make some decisions to leave the neighborhood because Brown would allegedly drive by their family walks.
Do what?
Screeching his tires, scaring the family. The sources argue that using aggressive, loud noises to intimidate a family on a walk, it mirrors the tactics Kendall experienced.
The intentional use of public exposure and psychological pressure.
Exactly. To control and frighten those who stand against him.
Beyond individual safety, the sources also document a significant institutional response within the faith community. We should probably review the ripple effect that was mentioned regarding Daystar.
It is a massive ripple effect. The sources cite a substantial impact, claiming that 28 broadcasters allegedly left Daystar due to the controversy.
28! That is a staggering number.
It is. It suggests a major internal crisis or, a moral fracture within the network. The alleged conduct became impossible to ignore, potentially signaling a significant financial and ethical blowback to the network just due to the association with Brown.
And the sources used that number to really demonstrate how widespread the professional disapproval was.
Yes, within the broader Christian broadcasting world.
So what about the local institution, Gateway Church, the major megachurch in that area? How did they respond when parents started raising alarms?
Well, the response from the parents was immediate. They called Gateway Church, insisting that their children be protected. They demanded assurances that Brian would not be anywhere near the kids' facilities.
And did the church do anything?
The sources confirmed that, in response to these community demands, Gateway Church allegedly implemented specific measures.
And what were those measures?
The sources indicate that the church required all eyes on him whenever Brown dropped off his children.
So an active internal monitoring system.
That's what it implies. a system designed to protect minors from proximity to him, which really validates the community's deep-seated concerns. And Kendall herself was reportedly one of the parents who called Gateway, having been a longtime member, which just underscores the severity of the perceived risk.
Finally, let's address the source's profound skepticism about Brown's claimed lie detector test, the one that was allegedly used to clear his name publicly.
The sources are highly critical of this polygraph for several reasons.
The first being
The legal fact that they are explicitly not admissible in a court of law. They have questionable reliability. So the sources suggest the presentation of this test was just a form of public relations meant to deceive the community, not a genuine legal clearance.
And the sources also question the process itself, right? They suggest it might have been compromised.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They raise very pointed questions about what specific questions were even asked and whether Brown received any coaching or briefing from potentially controversial figures.
They mention Doug Weiss specifically.
They do. They mention Doug Weiss, who the source material claims is controversial for allegedly needing to take multiple tests himself to publicly prove he's no longer a sex addict.
So by connecting Weiss to this process, the sources are suggesting that the methods used to get these polygraph results were suspect, that they could have been easily manipulated.
And that would render the results meaningless to anyone who understands the tactics sometimes used in these kinds of public-facing tests.
That's a pretty strong argument.
It is. The sources contend that the combination of a closed investigation, the failure to interview key witnesses, and then the subsequent reliance on a non-admissible, potentially rigged lie detector test.
Sure.
It created a dangerous vacuum.
A vacuum that necessitated private citizens like Kendall stepping up?
To provide community vigilance and correct the record, they argue that this whole cycle just validates the entire claim that Brown was effectively running a successful, deceptive playbook.
The playbook of seducing parents, then kids, pushing parents out, and maintaining control.
All without facing any real accountability.
So this deep dive has meticulously compiled source material that alleges this stark, intentional contrast between Joshua Brown's public image as a man of faith and a pattern of alleged intimidation and systematic deception.
It's a huge contrast.
It is. The sources allege dishonesty from the family level through those conflicting statements to police about the beach house, all the way to calculated escalating public harassment in an affluent gym setting. The picture painted is, well, it's cohesive and it's relentless.
And the central concerns raised by these sources, they move beyond just personal conduct to much larger systemic questions. You have the alleged failure of the police to interview key witnesses like the nanny, Denise Boggs, and Debbie Leonard.
Then you have the alleged deliberate misrepresentation of facts to authorities by Brown himself, which necessitated private citizens like Kendall calling the police back just to correct the record.
And most disturbingly, you have the documented community fear. Fear that forced individuals to alter their daily routines in institutions like Gateway Church to implement active monitoring procedures.
It just raises very serious questions about the role of these institutions when official investigations are perceived to fall short, particularly when the alleged deception is so intertwined with a highly public, constructed image of faith.
And the sources argue so forcefully that Brown was following a specific playbook, one designed to control narratives and intimidate opponents. So given these detailed, repeated accounts of public confrontation, from the screeching tires near the Lambs to the calculated, stalker, dangerous behavior at the Westlake gym, we are left with a fundamental and provocative thought.
Which is?
When private citizens, armed with detailed observations and alleged patterns of conduct, step up to protect perceived public safety after official investigations are closed, what responsibility do local authorities and major community institutions bear in validating and addressing that fear? And knowing that this alleged pattern of behavior thrives on concealment and unchallenged proximity, how does the knowledge contained in these sources permanently change the framework we use to approach communal safety, especially in high-trust, information-rich environments like affluent faith communities? That is the lasting question this deep dive leaves for you to explore.